Greetings. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, brought to you by Heart and Soul Broadcasting Services. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. Today I'm in conversation with Dr. Ignatius Mabasa, a storyteller, a writer, and an academic. If you enjoy this conversation, remember to subscribe, to like, and to share. Let's get down to some work.
Your works are in Shona, and we have no way of verifying that you match and meet the standards that we require. We need to revisit, restore, and restory our stories.
Dr. Ignatius Mabasa, welcome to In Conversation with Trevor.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so honored and happy to be here.
I'm honored to be sitting with you. I'll get to talking about the wonderful things that you've done, including being the first person in Zimbabwe to write a PhD thesis in Shona. I mean, who does that? That's amazing stuff. So I'm looking forward to us going there. But before we do that, I just thought should just update our viewers out there. We are currently sitting on 10.7 million views on YouTube alone. We are on 83.1 thousand subscribers on YouTube. We've got 8.7 million views on Instagram and 4.5 million views on TikTok. And I thought also today, with our good friend and colleague, Blessed Mhlanga, still in police detention, that we ought to honor him. We're proud of Blessed Mhlanga and the work that he's done. We absolutely believe that he has not done anything wrong. He was arrested for doing his work, which is constitutionally protected. Blessed, unfortunately, joins a number of people who've been incarcerated for totally unfounded reasons and allegations, like Tendai Biti, Hopewell Chinono, Job Sikala, and Jacob Ngarivume. And we will pray to God that he comes out and is proven to be innocent. So yeah, he's in our mind. We cannot forget him at all. So, Doctor, you were the first person at the time when you did this to write a PhD thesis in Shona at Rhodes University. Talk to me about the decision to say, I'm going to write my thesis in Shona, and how you went about doing that.
Oh, thank you. That's very interesting. Initially, I had set out to write a creative writing thesis. I wasn't looking at doing a PhD in Shona. I submitted my proposal to one of the universities. I wish I could name them.
Name them, please.
Please.
Yeah,
Wits.
Yeah.
So I gave my proposal to Wits University because I wanted to do a PhD in creative writing, because I'm a storyteller, I'm a writer. So they looked at my portfolio and they said, well, we are so sorry. Your works are in Shona, and we have no way of verifying that you match and meet the standards that we require.
Wow.
I said, look, my first novel received the Zimbabwe Book Publishers Association Award, was nominated as one of Zimbabwe's 75 best books of the century. Then the other ones won NAMA Awards. Why don't
3 NAMA Awards winners from your writings?
Yes. So I'm saying, look, maybe you could use that, to say, okay, this is justification to say this work is, or this proposal and this individual can actually do their PhD in creative writing with us. And besides, I've written short stories that have been published by Irene Staunton, Jane Morris. So I'd, proved myself. But then they said no. I was hurt because I was beginning to see something which, was going to spill over into the decision now to write my PhD in Shona. I've written in my mother language, and I want to write new work in English, but now I am being told your works in Shona are not something that we can verify and accept that they meet our standards. So I started to see a replay of some form of apartheid, if I may put it that way. So I'm saying to myself, look, this is me telling our stories, my story.
What year was this, Dr. Mabasa?
Oh, let me, COVID did something. That was just, a few years just before COVID.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm probably thinking 20, because COVID-19. So probably around 2017, 2018.
Okay.
Yeah. So I then, talked to a friend, Flora Vetwild, Dambudzo Marechera's girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, Flora, she's a professor of literature she's done a lot of research, Zimbabwean literature. So I said, look, Flora, I'm in trouble. I really wanted to write, a thesis based on storytelling, the stories that I grew up listening, my grandmother was telling me this. I want to do something unique, something creative, because anyway, novel writing is about offering something new. So this is what has happened. And she says, oh, I'm so sorry, Ignatius. Why don't you try to do autoethnography? And I can link you up with a professor who is so big into this. And also, perhaps he may give you also an opportunity to write this in your language. Because...
And autoethnography, what is that?
It is when an individual is writing and studying about his or her own culture, not as an outsider now.
Right.
It's now different from ethnography, where you had foreigners coming, describing you, talking about your culture. But you are now writing as somebody who is living and experiencing that culture.
Okay.
Yes. So she was saying, you have so much to tell, from the time you started storytelling to how you transitioned to become a writer. You have so much. Why don't you, use autoethnography? And also the beauty of autoethnography is it blends creative writing with research. Mm-hmm. So that's when, I was referred to Professor Russell Kashula at Rhodes University. I gave him my proposal. He looked at it. He was wowed. And he said, look, I've never received such a well-written proposal in years. Start writing. Start doing your research. Meanwhile, he had gone to Cairo.
So this is now research on what are you writing? What are you researching?
I'm researching on storytelling, the history of storytelling in Zimbabwe from the time when we were colonized and how our stories changed from being oral to how they were put in books by the missionaries, mm-hmm. and to how slowly the culture of storytelling began to sort of die, because much later you get to see that other forms of communication were now being prioritized, but also because of people moving from
urbanization.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you do your thesis. How long does it take to finish your thesis?
It was 3 years.
3 years.
I had the advantage of the shutdown during COVID. Just gave me so much time. So where we had the shutdown and people are complaining,
you were writing.
I was writing.
So what is your thesis called? What's the title of your thesis?
My thesis is called Chave Chemutengure Virirengoro Usarungano Rwendo Rwengano Dzeva Shona So what I am doing is I am looking at the very first Shona song.
And you're writing in Shona.
I'm writing in Shona. So Chava Chemtengure Virirengoro is a song that was sung by our people when they saw the pioneer column wagons rolling into the country. And they had no words for these objects that, had wheels. And they said, hey, that thing is called Chemtengure. And they simply derived or borrowed from the Shona word dengu, which is a large harvesting basket. You could fit, the traditional dengu, maybe, 4 or 5 adults could fit in a dengu. It was huge. So they said, this thing is called Chemtengure. And it is here. And this is where you see the power of indigenous knowledge. There was analysis, they could critique, they could make sense of what was happening. This thing is here to harvest indigenous people. And so I'm looking at that to, so I even came up with a theory in terms of how Chemtengure uproots, removes, processes, and dumps people in completely new environments where they struggle to survive. So I do that through the history now of, the Shona folktale and the changes that, has happened to it, up to the point where I'm now doing Ngano folktales on Twitter, so on X. Yeah.
And what's the biggest thesis that you posit in this in your PhD thesis?
The biggest thesis is we need to be careful not to be victims of historical and cultural disinheritance. We need to revisit, restore, and restory our stories.
That's powerful, Dad. So that's your thesis. What did you learn as you were writing this about yourself and the subject matter that you are writing on and writing about? What did you learn about yourself?
Oh, thank you. I feel almost like, crying. Myself, but also because I'm largely using the knowledge of our people. Folktales don't belong to, an individual. I was, amazed by the power of storytelling to correct and help us make sense of a lot of problems. And if we were to go back to our stories, to our indigenous knowledge, you will be surprised how much we would be able to solve a lot of problems that we are facing today.
Such as?
Climate change, for example. When you listen to our stories, we say, kare kare, pasi chigare. Pasi chigare is not, we have lost meaning of so many, rich, I'll probably say metaphorically rich words that are in our languages. Pasi chigare, basically you are talking of a time when the earth was still sitting. Now, come back to climate change. It is not the climate that is changing. It is you and me who are changing the climate. So, Pasi Chigare, what was happening? There was harmony. Man and nature could converse. There was respect, mutual respect. What is happening today? Look at what the Chinese are doing. Look at, the drainage system, in Harare when it rains. Are we still aware of that? So, but because we think we have made so much progress, but actually our progress is shooting ourselves in the, in the feet.
Wow. Given where we are right now, I mean, I get a sense that if we were to unpack this, there's so much in there. We have lost our ability to tell our stories. We've lost our language. I hear your passion as I'm talking to you right now, and you're wanting to cry. That is because of what you know, what it is possible for us to do with our language, with our wisdom. Can we undo this? Can we unscramble this egg? What would it take for us to do that?
You know, thank you for that question. There's a thing called political will. I'm so sorry to say our politicians mind about, well, maybe the Shona proverb would capture this. Simba kumuganu munda uchirarira. You know, you are
unpack that for us.
You are busy fighting over a boundary with your neighbor when the work in the field is not being done. Oh, my boundary, this is my boundary. This, you know, we are being petty. We are lacking the vision to understand the power of culture. If you look at the United States of America, the largest cultural export the largest, export is culture. Look at Hollywood.
Absolutely.
Look at the music industry. Look at, we have our comedians.
Coca-Cola, soft drinks, everything.
Absolutely. So this is why people talk of the Coca-colonization of the world. Because the Americans are unapologetic and they are pushing and they're pushing and they're pushing.
So I want us to focus on ourselves. Yeah, the Americans are doing that. Good for them. What about you and I? What about our politicians? And also, perhaps let's remove the politicians away out of this. What should you and I be doing to reverse this, rather to embark on this decolonization of the mind, decolonization of our language, decolonization of our culture? Sadly, we're speaking in English right now.
Yeah.
Because you speak a bit of Ndebele, I speak a bit of Shona. But that's part of the colonization, isn't it?
Yeah.
What do you and I, what responsibility do we have, particularly with somebody who sits on this repository of the wisdom that you've collected from a PhD thesis? What should we be doing?
We should be, ngesindebele lithi ilifa lezithutha lidliwa. You see, the inheritance of those who are foolish, I would like to, directly translate to say, is eaten.
Of course. By the wise one, the smart one, the clever ones.
And when they eat, don't think they will be looking at you. They will be eating and eating. So what am I saying? Look at Disney. Disney comes to Africa, takes our folktales, and does so many wonderful things with those very same stories that belong to us.
I'm going to stop you there because I really want to force you to focus on us. That is what Disney is doing. Yeah. What should we be doing? Maybe we will take a break here.
Okay. Thank you.
I really want to turn the conversation into, yes, there's so much that has been written about what Disney is doing, what American culture is doing. But what should you and I do? What should Zimbabweans, what should Africans do? So when we come back, we're going to take a break now. We're going to go to that place because, it's so easy for us to be fixated about what Coca-Cola is doing and so forth. But I want to go to that place where we begin to have the conversation and own the agency about what it is that we can do.
Yes.
At home, don't go away. We will go to that painful place of decolonizing the mind and decolonizing our culture, even as I speak to you in English. See you on the other side.
Why should I be then telling my story in a language that perpetuates my being colonized?
Greetings. My name is Trevor Ncube, host of In Conversation with Trevor, Zimbabwe's most engaging conversational show. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. We've brought before your screens change makers from arts, business, and politics, and from the region. Please join our growing community of viewers. Subscribe, like, and share. Welcome back to our conversation with Dr. Ignatius Mabasa, a storyteller, a writer, and an academic. Remember, we would love you to subscribe, we would love you to share and to like. We are excited about 10.7 million views on YouTube, 8.3 million subscribers on YouTube, 8.7 million views on Instagram, 4.5 million views on TikTok, and growing. And as I said when I started, we're remembering our brother, our friend, our colleague, Blessed, who is spending time in detention for having done his work. All that he's being punished for is having done his work. And he's in our minds, he's in our thoughts, and he's in our prayers. Dr. Mabasa, I could hear your frustration when you wanted to cry and break down. And correct me if I'm wrong, your frustration is, you know the beauty we have in our language. You know the richness of our culture. You know the power of our languages. You have seen it through your research. You have told some of the stories. Your frustration is, most of us don't seem to realize the beauty we contain in our stories, in our languages. Am I right?
Absolutely.
I've gotten you wrong?
You are absolutely right. When you look at our situation, it is probably one of the biggest tragedies that you can probably find. I don't know who is writing the script, but we are probably, happily participating in the writing of that script. When we got independence, we should have started something, but instead, you notice, I'm sure you used to hear of an institution that was called the Literature Bureau. It's gone. In an independent Zimbabwe, where we are supposed to be telling our own stories, who created the Literature Bureau? It was the colonizer. They had a purpose, for creating that, but who also played a role in helping Africans start telling their stories. Anyway, I could go back and say, in 1931, one colonial administrator boldly wrote, "The native cannot write." What is it with our people today? We still don't write. How many years after independence? Robert Mugabe dies without even writing. Not even, just, something short that we can say, okay, this guy said this.
After reflection, yeah?
Absolutely. We keep losing our libraries. I'm sure you know Patisanyati, Konti Mhlanga, Professor George Kahari, Professor Emmanuel Chiome. We have people what are we doing?
I'm going to throw back the question.
Absolutely.
At you. What are we doing? What should we be doing?
We should be sitting down. This is a wonderful platform, Trevor.
Thank you.
You are bringing Zimbabweans to have conversations. We also need to have cultural conversations that really say, look, let's talk about our inheritance. Let's strategize. If we are saying Hollywood and now Bollywood and now Nollywood, look at the Nigerians. They're doing so well when it comes to filmmaking, to, novel writing. You talk of Chimamanda.
So what you're saying is we should be writing.
We should be writing.
But I want to challenge you and say, I think the starting point is you should be able to speak fluently in Shona, fluently in Ndebele, in Zezuru, in Karanga, and I should do the same thing.
Absolutely.
So that we understand each other, so that we have this conversation in our own language.
Absolutely.
We should be proud of our languages and who we are. We are not. If anything, there's a stigma
that
is associated with somebody who's speaking in Shona and not being able to speak in English. We should reclaim our languages. We should reclaim our cultures and be proud of those. Begin to tell movies, documentaries and stories in our language. We should be forcing our governments. That is where our agency comes in.
Absolutely.
To prioritize the importance of every Zimbabwean being able to speak the 11 or so languages that we have. Do you want to push back on that?
Yes. You see, the opportunity is still there for us to do that. It's not too late. What is the language of, that is spoken in Kombis?
Right.
Can you go to Mbare Msika and say, hey, can I have that tomato, please? And also, it doesn't work. We still have our languages. And it is, I think, now a case of us, the learned, who want to remove knowledge from people by, continuing to have conversations.
With Trevor in English.
And then the paradox also, you're talking of people who say, we are we are one with the people. They go at the back of beyond. Mount Darwin, Rushinga.
Speaking English.
Yeah. What are we saying? And then we seem to be enjoying, being in a state of a colonized mind. We need to be liberated.
Tell me, how did you get your passion for storytelling in Shona? Where did you get this passion from? Was it from your parents, from your grandparents? Talk to me about your journey that has made you so passionate about what you do.
Thank you so much. I was raised by my grandmother, Amangwenya Emma Mabasa. She was one amazing
Where
woman.
Was this?
This was in Mount Darwin, at our farm. We didn't have television. We didn't have radio. And of course, being farmers, my grandmother and grandfather would spend the day busy working, doing this and that. It was in the evenings that, when it was, not summertime, that my grandmother would then start telling stories. And I guess, I think this is where you also need to see that even if it's not written, that's beautiful, powerful literature. Storytelling.
Yeah.
So it was through her storytelling that I got to discover worlds, that I got to discover that it is easy for you to get lost in a story. And because of that, I was then, because we were, a lot of us, Vasukuru. And so what happened is the war came and we had to move to the city. And when I was now staying with my aunt in the city, again, we had an old radio, but there was no TV. Mm-hmm. And once in a while, yes, we could listen to the radio. But my Vazukuru would now request me, as somebody who is coming from Kumusha, you are the one who is full of stories. Tell us those stories. And so I was forced to remember the stories that grandma used to tell us. And I started, retelling them. But in the process, something was also beginning to happen. Where I could not remember all the detail, I started, making up, filling in, with my own lines. And I can say that's probably also how the writer was born. But it all started with my grandmother, the storyteller.
Wow.
Yes.
And you continued it in a way. Which school did you go to?
Well, Morris Depot. We were in the police camp.
Yeah.
And then I, from there, went to Zuwarabuda in Highfields, or Glenora. From there, I went to Esigodini because my aunt's husband was a policeman. So, they were always being moved. So then went to Esigodini. Then from Esigodini back to Harare after my aunt's husband passed away. That was now in 1979. Came back to Harare and then got enrolled at Chinembiri Primary School in Chitungwiza. That's where we used to see the literature bureau van bring books for sale. You could buy a book for 1 cent, 2 cents, 3 cents, and a book for 10 cents. Wow, that was, those
big book.
Yeah. So that's where I went to school. Then eventually Harare High School, and then
Then University of Zimbabwe.
Then University of Zimbabwe.
What did you study at UZ?
At UZ, I was doing a Bachelor of Arts general degree in Shona and linguistics. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And where did the idea of I want to do a PhD come from as you're doing your undergrad?
I never thought I was going to do a PhD. I just wanted to remember I said I wanted to do a PhD in creative writing. But as for this path or trajectory that eventually I eventually took, I'd not thought about it.
Do you regret that this trajectory?
No, not at all. Because you asked it earlier on, there was something that was happening when Professor Kashula loved my proposal and told me to start writing. I started writing, and he says, well, what's happening now? We'll submit your proposal to the Higher Degrees Committee. And the Higher Degrees Committee met when he was not there. And they not rubbished, because they just said, there's something that we're not, picking.
Getting.
Yeah. And specifically, they pointed out that, the theory, we would want to hear scholars like Spivak, like Baba, Homi Baba, Edward Said. These are radical scholars who are for the decolonization they're for the decolonization of education and also of methodologies. And they are for the telling of stories, of people's stories, in their language, by allowing the subaltern, people at the peripheries to also have a voice. So I then received my proposal, very hurt. And Professor Kashula says, no, just incorporate the scholars. When I read the scholars, that was a mistake. That's when I said, why should I be then telling my story in a language that perpetuates my being colonized? I want to tell my story for my people, for our archive, because right now our archive is actually being robbed as we continue creating content in foreign languages.
What I don't want us to miss, and what I don't want people to miss out there, is the fact that inadvertently somebody pushed you towards a certain direction which you initially did not like. But you're absolutely enjoying yourself now. What does that say about lives and the decisions that we take? Because this is a big one.
Thank you very much. Sometimes you may think, look, I'm going to town, and then suddenly somebody stops you and they need help, and you are saying, I have a meeting in town. I must be in town right now doing this. But you never understand why Providence said you should meet and why that happened. Because I thought I knew what I wanted. But this is where probably I can say none of us is as good as all of us. Even your enemies can also bring out something that you think, because I really was hurt, like I'm saying, but it was, I would probably, this is the other thing. I think in Shona we have...
Express yourself in Shona.
Thank you.
Gatitaure Shona. Yeah.
In Shona we have a saying that says, Mukutanda makudo, ndimo mukunonga ho. As you are chasing away the baboons, because they've come to your field to raid
You're angry with them.
You are so angry.
You find your purpose.
You are like, you discover mushrooms. You're like, so had it not been because the baboons came And you were so angry.
I want to just, for the people watching at home, that's such an important lesson in life. To always be aware, to look and listen to things that you might think are not part of your purpose.
Absolutely.
But which, as you are now thoroughly harvesting the decision that somebody helped you make into writing your thesis in Shona, when you had wanted to go and write about?
Creative writing.
Creative writing.
In English.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Sometimes I'm just going back to the process itself, because when I got so angry, I then found an opportunity to also understand things that I didn't understand when I initially set out. So suddenly, as you say, I started discovering not things about myself, but also about my culture. This is where I started asking myself, where are the African intellectuals? Because Spivak is Indian, Baba, I'm not quite sure. Then you have the Mexicans or South Americans. Where are we? That's when eventually I came across guys like, Sabelo, Gacheni Ndlovu, Akile Mbembe, and so forth. But what we are doing is just the beginning. It's not enough. We need to work on building the African archive.
And we need to have Dr. Mabasa leading that process, because you understand what is in us and how rich we are as a people culturally. We're going to take a break here, Dr. Mabasa. When we come back, you have written 22 novels. You have written short stories, poetry. You have a movie. You have spent time as a senior fellow at the Department of Anthropology at the University of Amsterdam, and as a research associate at Rhodes University. I want us to go to those places and get to talk about the thing, your creative juices. What gets you writing? What gets you creative? So at home, don't go away. When we come back, we're going to go to those 22 books and what made them come to life. See you on the other side.
Storytelling is not just, telling stories to, while up time. You have your values formation. And look at where we are in terms of values.
Welcome back to our conversation with Dr. Ignatius Mabasa, a storyteller, a writer, and an academic. Have you subscribed yet? Please remember to subscribe, to like, and to share. We have, at the moment, 83.1 subscribers. Don't you want to join that growing group of discerning viewers? 10.7 million views on YouTube alone, 8.7 million views on Instagram, and 4.5 million views on TikTok. Join our growing audience and grow and learn with all of us. As we're taking the break, Dr. Mabasa, I was reflecting how we looked forward to the evening in Gwanda, in the rural areas, because Ugogo Loku would sit and tell us stories in Ghana, and they would bother them. You know what are you going to tell us? We have lost that.
Sadly.
I have lost that. I don't tell stories to my children, folklore stories. Later on, create the time. So I need to put my hand up. I'm guilty as charged. I'm one of those people that have contributed to the death of our culture and our storytelling. How hopeful are you that we'll recover this?
I think with technology, I know it's not going to be the same. When we record, we are probably the restoration that I was talking about and the storing can start to happen. But because you notice, like I was telling you, I became a storyteller because I was sitting down with my grandmother, listening to her tell stories. So maybe, as you say, we may need an intentional, well, I wouldn't want to call it, national program, but maybe, through schools. This is the stuff that we should be having when we're talking of a Ministry of Education and Culture, to say, where are the stories? Because storytelling is not just, telling stories to, while up time. You have your values formation. And look at where we are in terms of values.
Respect.
How is the driving on the roads? And you say to a young man, how are you driving? What?
And then they tell you where
when
you should go. Yeah.
But in storytelling, it's a complete world where
of molding, teaching each other.
Empathizing. You are put in somebody's shoes. You feel their vulnerability. You feel, it's not good for me to do this because I wouldn't want it to happen to me. So I wish, the best I can do for now, you previously said, let's not talk about what Disney.
No, we shouldn't.
I have, started a project where I'm recording, doing a recording. I wish I could, do podcasting like this, where probably I just come and empty all the stories that I have, have them stored somewhere, and our people can have access wherever they are. I'm working with a young lady. She's in Arizona, Zimbabwean. Her name is Primrose Zenga.
Mm-hmm.
She's also a wonderful storyteller. Actually, her book, Hengano book, just won a NAMA award. So we are working on something to say, can we start being intentional in creating a place where people can go? It could be a YouTube, channel or something like that, to try and recover and restore this institute. I know it's not going to be the same.
If it was easy, a lot of people would have done it. So it's a lot of heavy lifting that needs to be done. What's your favorite Ngano? What's your favorite story?
That's like asking you who is your favorite child?
Yeah, I know.
No.
Kare Kwaevepo, which one?
Oh no!
I'm putting you on the spot. Reflect as we are talking.
Yeah.
You have written 22 books, like I said, and you have been recognized. You've won 3. You've gotten 3 NAMA awards for some of your work. What do you find to be the subjects that you tend to write on, and what's your creative process like?
Thank you. I mainly write about young people for a very specific reason. I was telling you, I was raised by my aunt. My dad died when I was 5. And by that time, my mother had been sent away. They divorced. So I kind of, understand and empathize, and feel there are stories that young people who don't have the family, groundings, family covering, want to tell. So I find myself usually telling stories about vulnerable people. I have a novel, Ndafaire. It's about a young woman who finds herself, with an albino baby. She becomes a victim because, she's given birth to a child with albinism. The husband goes to the UK, never comes back. I have a story where you have a young boy who gets lost in a market because he's deaf. And then there's something that happens there that requires his brother to intervene and shame or embarrass himself only to rescue his deaf brother. So these are mainly the kind of,
the issues that exercise your mind, obviously from where you've come from. Your novel, is it Mapenzi or Mabenzi?
Mapenzi.
It's Mapenzi. The celebrated Time Literal Supplement of August 2001 said about Mapenzi, it's the most significant book to have come out of Africa. Well done.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting that. You have great writers like Tsitsi Dangarembwa, Charles Mungoshi, Shema Chinojga, Yvonne Vera. The list is endless. And you're talking of Zimbabwean writers.
And you produced this work.
Yeah, but did you see? They said out of Africa.
Yes.
So I still, feel
pinching yourself.
And by the way, it's in Shona. It's only now that Mapenzi has been translated into English and is being published by.
What was Mapenzi about?
Mapenzi follows.
In a nutshell.
Okay, it follows the story of a former liberation fighter who is now back in society. But he has moments where he has so much freedom of speech. He says things as they are, where others are, and that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. But he then also has people thinking he's mad, but the madness is actually a device that I use to allow him to have that freedom then to say things that other so-called normal people wouldn't say. But then surrounding him, he's always pointing at the folly of things that we are doing, including, political leaders.
Fantastic. So, and like I said, you've done 22 other books, and you have a film. You've one film, Chipo Nechipopai.
Yes.
Is that talk to me about Chipo Nechipopai, which it won the Best Short Film Award from the Zimbabwe International Film Festival. Well done again for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chipo Nechipopai is actually my attempt to recreate within the framework of the folktale a modern tale. So you hear, it plays with words to, get young people to, be interested, but also it's talking about a very serious matter, early childhood marriages. Because, it briefly says, paive nechimwe chipopai, chaive chakasungatai, chichijikapai. Chipopai chichakasangana nemumwe musikana ainzi Chipo. Mufunge, Chipo haana kumbonyara. Akati kuchipopai chakasungatai. Vachipopai, ndipewo pai yamuri kudya. Chipopai chakati, hehehe, pai ndinokupa. Kana uchibvuma kuita mukadzi wechipopai. Saka Chipo akabva aenda nechipopai. Kunogara nechipopai semukadzi wechipopai. Asi Chipo aingove nemakore 14 chete.
Oh.
And then,
wow.
it goes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What an amazing way of surfacing real life issues in a manner that is digestible to a lot of people. Are any of your books recommended texts in our schools?
Yes. Mapenzi has been a school set text. Ndafaire has been a school set text. Imbwa yemunhu, no. Ziso rezongororo, yes, it's been actually last year. It was an A-level.
That's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something good is happening there. Let's go to another piece of work that you do, which I find, big stuff. Translations. You've translated Tsitsi Dangaremba's Nervous Conditions. You translated Eddie Cross's book on President Mnangagwa. You've also translated Pinocchio from Italian to Shona, and the Constitution of Zimbabwe and the Bible. I mean, this is really heavy stuff. Talk to me about this work.
When you find yourself in the field of storytelling, language becomes, something that's indispensable in, telling stories. And you must process and reflect, especially now when we have to think across cultures. So I didn't really get formal training, as a translator. I think I started translating by accident when I was a visiting Fulbright scholar in the United States. And then there was so much demand for my storytelling. And because most of my stories are stories that I knew from my grandmother, I had to translate them on the go as I was, in front of audiences. So that process taught me something, that this is something that I can do. And so when the opportunity to translate, the Bible, to translate, the Constitution came, I was approached, largely for my understanding of, the Shona language. So I joined and became part of the team.
Of the team,
yeah.
Have you thought about building your own team to do this kind of work?
Not yet. Maybe now that you say it, sometimes, you never think of certain, of doing certain things until somebody says, have you thought about this? I would certainly want to consider that.
And all these translation assignments that you got, is it people coming to you, or is you going to them rather than saying, Tsitsi Dangarembizi, I think this can be translated? How did that conversation happen?
For nervous conditions, I was teaching nervous conditions in the United States. And I was challenged by my students when they were asking so many questions, because nervous conditions has a group of women who are just too ordinary. They wouldn't even be able to read English. And so I said to myself, if this is advocacy literature, and I consider it as advocacy literature, then it means it needs to be in the language of these characters. And most of these women who are out there in the rural areas or even in the ghettos must read this story.
So you went to Tsitsi and said, can I translate this? Or
I started translating. Then I went to Tsitsi and I said, I want to translate your book. But then there were issues that time. And it took us almost 20 years?
Wow.
Yeah. Then eventually she managed to get the rights for her book. And then formally she said, look, why don't you continue with that project? And I had to start afresh because, look, if, considering the period that, I had taken a break, it no longer made sense. I'd lost the momentum.
Fulbright, which university did you go to?
I was at 2 community colleges.
Yeah. Which ones are those? Yeah.
North Central College and College of DuPage.
In the US?
Yes, in Illinois.
Okay.
Yes.
And which other places have you gone to? You've been with the Department of Anthropology. Do you want to take us to those places that you've been in overseas?
I've been a writer and storyteller in residence at the University of Manitoba in Canada. And this is one thing, I'm sorry, I'm now, dumping all my pain. It takes a university in Canada to acknowledge that you have something that our people can, benefit. So I traveled to Canada. I'm teaching for 4 months at a university, teaching them our stories and how to tell stories. We are not doing that here. And, so this is where now you find individually I'm, moving around schools, but it's not enough. It's not enough. We have to be, intentional. We have to plan this.
What would it take to multiply your effort and make the change that you want? What would it take?
I would love to train teachers, for example, who are teaching languages, because I get teachers who come to me and they say, we are being asked to tell stories. We don't know how to do it. But it's easy. Do workshops. And, if I could get, to just do a 1 month, workshop where, we meet on a, number of days And after that, I tell you, they go and train others and share and cast. Because what happens if teachers go and share the techniques with students, we are good to go.
Which institution are you associated with at the moment? Where are you based? What are you doing essentially right now?
Right now, I'm with the University of Zimbabwe. I'm in the Department of Creative Media and Communication, but I'm also research associate with Rhodes University and also senior fellow with Amsterdam University. And with Amsterdam University, specifically work to do with climate change. Yes.
Unpack that for us.
We're looking at how indigenous knowledge systems make sense of climate change. And quite often, our people are not included in such dialogue, in such discourse.
And yet they know so much.
They know, so you'll be surprised. You just say, oh, I wish we had. So this is where we need to decolonize knowledge as well. Because we think it is the West that must teach us everything. We have so much to teach the West.
Absolutely. Dr. Mabasa, you are, you don't realize how important you are to this nation. I think what we've just done now is to expose the amazing person that you are. I suspect after this conversation, a lot of people are going to call you and say, can we do this? Can we do that? And so forth. Because what you are doing is something at the center of how we rebuild a new Zimbabwe. How do we rebuild a new Zimbabwe if we don't know who we are, where we come from? Like you rightly point out, look at how we're driving. How we're driving is a symptom of who we've become. And it's because we've lost our values and we've lost the center of who we are as a people. So thank you so much. I wish you all the best. Before we go, we're going to talk books. I know you are an author yourself. You brought a couple of books. I've got books that I want to recommend to people. So let's do books right now. So the first book that I'm going to recommend is by my good friend Petina Gapa, Out of Darkness, Shining Light. Wow. Petina, I think she outdid herself here. This is an amazing book. I actually have had an opportunity to discuss it with her on this show. Have you read it? I
have a copy.
I'm
supposed to supposed to translate
it.
Yes. So
please do.
Yeah.
What a book. Amazing book. And these books I haven't read, but I bring them out to honor the late Patisa Nyati, Tumbule, A History of the Bebe People of Zimbabwe.
Wow.
Patisa gave me this in Bulawayo 3-4 years ago when we had a conversation. Another one, a very thick book again by Patisa Nyati. Patisa Nyati at 70, A Life Dedicated to the Arts, Culture and Heritage. And this is book 2 of book 1 and 2, honoring a cultural diplomat, a cultural giant, a cultural ambassador, Patisa Nyati. I have no doubt that in you is somebody who's going to do the kind of work, and you've already started. Do you want to share with us the books that you've brought here? Shall we say 2 or 3 books or maybe 4?
I'm so pleased with this, my latest. It's a collection of poetry.
Zwingori Zwidori Nezwigure Zwakadakwa. I tried it.
You tried. Zvingori zvidhori nezvigure zvakadhakwa.
Netembo. This is Gano. Netembo, what is Netembo?
Poetry.
Poetry.
Yes.
Poetry, yeah.
Yes.
Ignatius, wonderful. So there you are. Lots of beautiful poetry there. But well, let me not say anything else. And what else do you have?
Well, you know what? No,
Pinocchio. Let's talk to Pinocchio. Huh?
Well, this is a translation of the famous Italian story or folktale, by Carlo Collodi, which the Italian embassy asked me and Elvis Marie to translate. And it was such an honor. Very challenging because some of the, or let me say, the material culture of Italians and Zimbabweans, is, the guys in here.
Oceans apart.
Absolutely. The guys here, they wear wigs. And, so you have to find, but it was fun. It was fun. And
any that you want to highlight there from those that you brought?
I was going to, say, probably I'll highlight Zisore Zongororo.
Mm-hmm.
That's my Oxford University published novella, which was a school set text up to last year. But this is the famous Mapenzi. And I'm so pleased to, I think I've said this, that Mapenzi is, I was approached by the University of Georgia Press in the United States, and they wanted to translate it into English. So it's coming out in about 2 months.
Well done.
Oh, thank you.
And you did Mapenzi when was this?
This was my debut novel, 1999.
1999.
Yes.
And the world still has an interest in this piece of work.
People tell me it's a classic. It's still relevant to,
Is it a classic in Zimbabwe? Do people realize the beauty that it is?
It is a classic in Zim. And, I would tell you I've written, other works, but people keep...
Mapenzi.
They say, Mapenzi. I get people say, I was doing sciences, but my colleagues were doing Shona at that time. And they were mad about this book. And so that's how we guys in the sciences ended up reading.
What does this book mean to you and the response that it has elicited from the public? What does that do to you? What does that say to you?
I think it gives me hope that yes, we go about saying Zimbabweans don't read. Yeah, I agree. I'm not quite sure whether we don't read or we don't buy books.
Yeah,
we may need to separate. Yeah. So, but it gives me hope that if people can still identify with a story that is written in a local language and go on and on. This is almost now what? 20
plus years.
Yeah. And they still say it's so.
You can't keep a good Mapenzi down.
I like that. And then, in Kiswahili, Mapenzi means love.
Wow.
You just say, oh, crazy.
Doc, thank you so much for creating the time to join us. We wish you all the very best, and I'm sure we're going to be seeing more Mapenzis coming from you. Allow me to turn over now to our viewers who are all over the world in the diaspora in Zimbabwe. We are delighted. Like I said, we're sitting on 10.3 million views, 18.3 thousand subscribers, and we're growing. Please subscribe, like, and share. Remember, we are a weekly show. We are out every Monday, 7 a.m. Central African time. And indeed, to ensure you don't miss out, press that subscribe button. Go even further, press the notification button, and you receive a notification every time we have one of these quality conversations. Until next time, cheers to you all.